Hey guys, so here is part 2 of the lesson 1 notes. So we just talked about how to find outliers using your upper and lower limits. Okay, so now let's answer the rest of the questions here. So it says, why might an outlier occur? So what I want you guys to do is pause the video and then kind of just write down or jot down some of your ideas of why there may be an outlier. So go ahead and do that. Okay, let's see what you guys came up with. So some ideas that could occur with outliers is that there may be an error in recording. That does happen. Or it may just happen by chance. You know, the real world is not perfect, so it is possible that an outlier occurs. Not in a defined population. And you may have some other ideas as well. So that could be true of why outliers occur. Okay, so now let's look at our next spot. It says create a box plot for the data set. Use the star to indicate any outliers. So remember we talked about or saw box plots earlier on, like here we saw this. This is called a box plot, so we're going to do the same thing. So in order to do a box plot, we need to know our minimum value, Q1, median, our Q3, as well as our max value, okay? And so we're using it for the values that we got here, the 3 through 59. Okay, so now let's kind of talk about how do we identify some of these values. So I'm going to kind of just rewrite the numbers to make it easier for us. So we got 3, 10, 14, 19, 22, 23, 25, 31. So remember, these were the numbers that we already talked about. Now, we already talked about what is the Q1. So we said 14 was the Q1, so that stays. And then we said 31 was the Q3. Okay. Now, we also need to talk about the min value and the max, as well as the median. Now, when we do a box plot and we have an outlier, remember, our outlier here is 59. Okay. We're going to have to use a star for that. Now let's talk about min. Min is the smallest value in your data set. Notice that 3 is the smallest, so that is my min. Now, our max is usually going to be the largest value. 59 is the largest value. However, 59 is an outlier. So when you have outliers, they can never be min or max values. So instead of saying 59, our max value is actually 34. Now, when you do have an outlier, your Q1 and Q3, as well as your median, will stay the same. It's just your min or max could change. Okay, lastly, median. So remember, median is right in the middle. So notice that we have an even amount of values. So to find the median, we have to calculate the two middle numbers and find that average. So we're going to do 22 plus 23 divided by 2. You can plug that into your calculator and we should get a 22.5 as our median. Okay, now let's go ahead and create a box plot. Now you'll see on your notes that you have a number line, okay? So whenever you create a box plot, you should always have a number line, just like when we saw the example for this. Notice they had a number line. We always have to have a number line. So we can start our number line, and you can really use whatever values you want. So you can go by 5s, you can go by 10s, 15s, whatever you would like. I'm going to go by 10s here. So I'm going to have 10 and then 20, 30, that's a 30, and then 40, 50, and then 60. Since our highest value is 59, we're going to have to use that information. Okay, first I do my Q1. That's going to be my first whisker. So the I'm going to do my min value. Excuse me on that. It's actually the min. So my min is 3. So I'm going to estimate 3 is about here. Just know that you're going to have to estimate with some of these values. That is okay. Now from the min, we go to the Q1. Remember, our Q1 is 14. So 14 is about here. So I'm going to do this. Okay. So this value that I just did, this is what we call a whisker. This is my min. So I need to label that's my min. Now this next line was my Q1. I'm going to actually create a box with the median. So that's 22.5. That's maybe about right here. So I'm going to create a box. So this next line we said was the Q1 I have to label, and then this line was the median. I will label that next once I do my Q3. We said the Q3 is 31, so maybe about right here. So create that. So median is in the middle. This next part is our Q3. So notice how I'm labeling. You got to do that. So you got to label, you got to use a number line. Otherwise, you will lose points. Okay, so be careful. Then our max is 34. So it's kind of about right here. So I'm going to label that max. Okay. Now notice that I'm not labeling with the numbers. The only reason being is because I already labeled my numbers up here. So I said the min was 3, the max was 34, Q1 was 14, Q3 was 31. That's fine. Okay. But if you don't label the numbers up here, then you got to label the numbers on your box plot here. Okay. So just be careful with that. If you don't label the numbers out like I have it here, then you need to do it on the box plot. Otherwise, you just need to label like the min, Q1, median, Q3, max. Okay. Now, our last thing is we have to do the outlier. Remember, it says use the star to indicate any outliers. Our outlier was 59. So I'm going to have it kind of right here, and that indicates my outlier. And there is my box plot. Okay, now let's go ahead and do our last example, D. So we're going to create a frequency table and histogram for the data set. Use 0 to 9 for your first interval. Now, we've already seen what a histogram is. That was actually the very beginning, this part. Now, let's talk about what is a frequency table. That actually can just help you to create basically a histogram. Now, once again, I'm going to label out the numbers just so it makes it easier for us. So we got 3, 10, 14, 19, the 22 and 23, 25, 31, 34, and we do include the outlier 59. Now, when we use 0 to 9, we're going to do that for our first interval, and we're going to use it for the frequency table. So basically, the table, you're going to have whatever your interval is. I should put interval. And then we're going to do frequency. So how many times occurs? So our interval, we're going to start from 0 to 9 because it told us that's where we're going to start. Now remember, when we do our intervals, I now need to include 10. Notice I'm going for 9 values. So I go from 10 to 19. Okay, so 10 to 19. Now I got to do 20 to 29. Notice my intervals are in 9, so I'm keeping that up. Then I want 30 to 39. Then I need 40 to 49. That looks like a weird 4. Sorry, guys. There we go. And then lastly, 50 to 59. Now, you may be wondering, how do you know when to stop? Well, my last value is 59. That's kind of where this interval is at. So that's when I know to stop, okay? Okay, now, basically, we're counting out how many numbers are between 0 and 9. Notice 3 is the only number, so we only have 1 that is in between 0 and 9. Okay, what about values between 10 and 19? Well, we got 10, 14, and 19 is included. So 10 and 19 are included in this interval. So we actually have 3. Okay, 20 to 29. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3 again. Then 30 to 39. Well, that's going to be 2 values. So the 31 and 34, so that's 2. Notice we don't have any 40 to 49, so that's 0. And then our last number, there's just one of those. Okay, now we're going to take this information. So this was our table here, so our frequency table. We're going to take this information and create that histogram. There we go. Okay, so on the sides here, this is going to represent our frequency. On the bottom is going to be representative of our intervals. So we start at 0, that can be here. And then as stated, I went by tens. So I'm going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and I do the last one of 60. So 10. And then my highest interval is 3, so we can just do 1, 2, 3. We can do a fourth one if we want to. Okay, so now notice that from this 10, right? 10 is not included in my first interval. It's included in the second. So when I go from the 0 to 10, my frequency is just 1. So I just do this right here. Okay, now for my next one, this from 10 to 20 is actually representative of 10 to 19. Notice my frequency is 3. So I need to show that. There we go. Now notice there are no gaps. So whenever you do a histogram, there's no gaps between the bars. Now 20 to 30 really represents 20 to 29. So 30 is not included here, but 20 is. So once again, that's 3. From 30 to 40, know that 30 is included, but 40 is not, only from 30 to 39. So we only have 2 as our frequency there. Now 40 to 50, remember really that means 40 to 49. There's only 0, so we don't put anything there. And then our last one, there's 1. So then here we do a frequency of 1. So when you're doing your histogram, know that whatever the tick mark is, that is going to be not in the first bar, but in the second bar in the when you are including it. Okay, so be careful when you create that histogram. So here's our histogram, and we use the table to help us figure out the histogram there. Okay, if you have any questions, just let me know. See you guys later.